Today, we're diving into the economy of Algeria, a nation that's literally built on a sea of oil and gas. But what happens when that foundation starts to show some cracks? We're going to break down why this resource-rich giant is at a critical crossroads.
Okay, to really get Algeria's economy, you have to start right here with this one single, staggering fact. This chart says it all. Almost all of the country's export money comes from one place: hydrocarbons. We're not just talking about an industry. For decades, this has been the lifeblood of the entire nation, funding everything from roads to schools to salaries.
And that, right there, leads us to the central question of this whole explainer. When you rely so heavily on one thing, yeah, it can create incredible wealth, but it also makes you incredibly vulnerable. So what's Algeria's game plan for a future that's more stable and, diversified? Right, so let's take a closer look at that economic engine. It's the hydrocarbon money that paves the roads and funds all the social programs. But here's the thing about that engine. It runs on a really volatile fuel, the totally unpredictable prices of the global energy market.
This is where it gets kind of paradoxical. The rest of Algeria's economy, services, agriculture, it's actually growing. But the main engine, that hydrocarbon sector, it started to sputter. Why? Well, partly because of international agreements like OPEC Plus cuts that are meant to manage the world's oil supply. And when your most important industry shrinks, that slowdown is felt absolutely everywhere.
And this is what that looks like in real numbers. As you can see, the gap between what the government spends and what it earns has gotten way wider in just the last few years. It's the classic story of the resource curse. When energy prices are high, the money flows like water. But when they dip, the country is left with a massive hole in its budget.
So, how exactly does Algeria spend its money? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is what you could call its social contract. The state provides these massive, sweeping subsidies to its citizens. It's become a pillar of social stability, but it's also a massive financial burden.
Just look at that number for a second. $23.7 billion. That's the estimated cost of Algeria's subsidy programs back in 2021. It's an enormous amount of money to spend every year, all designed to keep the cost of living down for people.
So where's all that cash going? Well, this breakdown is incredibly revealing. A staggering 85% of it goes to subsidizing energy. That's keeping fuel, electricity, and gas prices artificially low. Food and water make up the rest. So the main takeaway here is that this is, first and foremost, an energy subsidy system.
Which, of course, brings us to a really critical question. When you make something like fuel cheap for literally everyone, is that support actually getting to the people who need it the most?
Well, it seems the public thinks the system is flawed. A survey found that most Algerians believe these subsidies actually help the wealthy more than anyone else. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. The more energy you consume, the more you drive, the bigger your house, the bigger your benefit. So that nearly $24 billion isn't necessarily going to those who are struggling, it's going to those who use the most.
Now, subsidies are just one piece of this puzzle. Algeria also has a formal social protection system. But as we're about to see, it's kind of a patchwork quilt, not a solid safety net, and it has some pretty big gaps that leave a lot of people vulnerable.
Okay, so the system basically has two main pillars. On one side, you've got social insurance, think pensions and unemployment benefits that you pay into while you're working. And on the other side, you've got social assistance, which is state-funded support like cash transfers for the poor or disability allowances. But here is the massive catch. An estimated 42% of Algerian workers are in the informal economy. We're talking cash-in-hand jobs, no official contracts. What that means is that nearly half the workforce isn't paying into social insurance, so they're not covered for things like pensions or unemployment. That is a huge hole in the safety net. This quote from a Chatham House report just nails the problem perfectly. The programs that exist have low coverage, the benefits aren't always enough, and there are big questions about whether they're even financially sustainable in the long run. It's a system that's really under a lot of strain.
So, faced with all of these deep-seated challenges, what's the path forward? Well, the government has started an ambitious reform plan, and it's aimed squarely at one thing: building a new, more diversified economy.
So what are they actually doing? Well, here are a few of the key moves. They've launched a new investment law to try and make the country more attractive to businesses. They're streamlining the bureaucracy through an online platform. And they're opening up key sectors, like mining, to more foreign investment. The whole goal is to cut through all the red tape that has historically held back private companies. And this is why those reforms are so incredibly urgent.
Right now, foreign direct investment in Algeria is half the average for similar emerging markets. Closing that investment gap is absolutely essential if they're going to build new industries and create the jobs they need for a future that goes beyond oil and gas.
So when you pull it all together, what you see is a country navigating a really complex transition. It's trying to shift from an economy that depends entirely on a finite resource to one that's dynamic, diversified, and sustainable for the long haul.
So, to boil it all down, you have a volatile, oil-funded economy that's propping up a very expensive and pretty flawed social system. All of that is creating this urgent, pressing need for fundamental reform. It's a complex web of challenges that are all tied together.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? Algeria has the wealth. It has the potential. The challenge now is whether it can reform its economic and social structures to build a future that's more resilient and inclusive, one that works for everyone. Can they do it? The path ahead is definitely one to watch. Thanks for joining us.